Thank you for watching the presentation of Cross 6013 Team 6. The topic of this team's presentation is case study design, and the team members are YIN HAO, Liu Luwei, Zhang Hanwen, and Xie Xiaoyu. Before we start the formal presentation, I would like to briefly introduce the main content of this presentation. The first part is an introduction to the case study design itself, including its definition, characteristics, strengths and weaknesses, reliability and validity, and the basic steps of the implementing a case study analysis. The second part starts with a prior literature by introducing the research questions and hypotheses, variables involved, various frameworks, sampling techniques and samples, tools used in the study, data analysis methods, results, discussion of conclusions, and suggestions for future research. The formal reporting begins below. First, look at the definition of the case study method. A case study is an in-depth study of one person, group, or event. In a case study, nearly every aspect of the subject's life and history is analyzed to seek patterns and causes of behavior. Case studies can be used in various fields, including psychology, medicine, education, anthropology, political science, and social work. Case study research also differs from research conducted through experiments. In case study research, the conditions of the sightings and the context are integral to the research, and the researcher does not exclude or control for those factors. As in experimental research, we then look at what the case study have to offer. In addition to what is described for you on the slide, the characteristics of the case study can be summarized as follows. First, a case that is bounded or defined in time, space, and activity. Second, a context-based study on the phenomenon rather than a study conducted in a lab or through modeling. Third, in-depth investigation. Fourth, multiple sources of evidence. Fifth, the research question that cannot be answered using only numerical data. Although the time allotted is short, here I would like to expand on the fact that we know that there are two main types of case study designs, single case studies and multi-case studies. Then the two characteristics of a multi-case studies design are, in my opinion, more sufficient and can even be summarized by the word replication. Unlike other typical research designs, the case study approach has its own unique strengths and weaknesses. Well, let's first look at the advantages. Its ability to see a relationship between phenomena, context, and people. Second, flexibility to collect data through various means. Third, ability to capture the context and lived reality of participants. Fourth, flexibility to be used at various points in research projects, including pilot research. Fifth, ability to explore deeper causes of phenomena. Sixth, ease of explaining research results to a non-specialist audience. The last one, case study research is highly adaptable to the needs of researcher and the nature of the research question. All in all, case study research is highly adaptable to the needs of the researcher and the nature of the research question. For example, data can be collected through interviews, focus groups, questionnaires, documents, direct observation, and participant observation. So what are the disadvantages of the case studies? First, difficulty generalizing findings from one case study to other sightings. Second, risk of bias, as the researcher's personal opinions and preferences may influence the research. Third, difficulty convincing readers who are accustomed to clear statistical answers. Yes, in-depth analysis may not be suitable for the audience. All in all, case study research is susceptible to bias when the researcher's personal opinions and preferences interfere with the collection and analysis of data. For example, The researcher may think people of a certain age group will not provide quality information and may not include them when conducting interviews. Alternatively, when making observations or analyzing documents, the researcher might only look for evidence that supports their hypothesis rather than a wide variety of data. For design, reliability and validity are necessary to ensure the feasibility and the results. So as the slide shows, we are familiar with the various types of reliability and validity that can be used to judge our design. But that's too thin. So I'm going to start with the various types of reliability and validity and make a table of how we can ensure them in our own research design and what stage of the case study these strategies should be used in, so that you can understand them more intuitively. I will just quickly go through the various of strategies below because time is of the essence, so you can pause to watch if you want to go deeper. For conceptual validity, we could use multiple sources of evidence, form a chain of evidence, require primary providers of evidence to case study reports, draft for inspection, verification. For intrinsic validity, we could perform pattern matching, attempt a certain interpretation, analyze competing explanations in opposition to it, use logic models. For extrinsic validity, we could guiding single case studies with theory, multi-case studies by repeating the replication. For reliability, we could adopt draft case studies, create a case study database, and repeat implementation. Multiple evidence types presented. Why are these often various validity deficits in our research? It may be because self-reported data, unsubstantiated observations, post hoc and systematic summaries, and overgeneralization. Intrinsic and extrinsic validity are not generalized. It is the construction of a case that determines whether a research operation enhances internal or external validity. The same research operation may be internally valid in one case, constructed and externally valid in another. Finally, it is time to introduce the process of how a case study is conducted. That is, how we should design a case study. The elements involved in the design of the case study are first described as follows. The first, the research question, the appropriate how and why questions, then the proposition or theory of the study. The third, definition of the unit of analysis, event, entity, and individual. The last, the connection between information and the proposition. For example, the pattern matching approach proposed by Donald Campbell. As we have mentioned above, the case study design contains both single case and multi-case categories. And we will start by looking at the design steps that describe it most extensively. So first we should select a case, then we build a theoretical framework, and we should collect our data, and finally we describe and analyze the case. Well, I have organized the steps of the single case study and the multi-case studies into separated tables and diagrams. The single case study is divided into 3 stages and 7 steps, and the multi-case study process is shown in the diagram. But we should always note that in the multi-case study process, there are often multiple returns to the replication behavior of subject selection before the integration stage. Okay, so the above is an introduction to all the content about methodology. So let's start with the literature on what is included in a case study literature. First of all, let's take a look at the basic information of this top article, which is entitled Experiences with a Nature-Based Intervention Program in a Northern Natural Setting, a longitudinal case study of 2 women with stress-related disorders. The research questions for this article are: this study explored the experiences of people with stress-related illnesses participating in a natural-based intervention program in a northern natural setting. This article addresses cognitive behavioral therapy, nature-based interventions, we call it NBI, functioning in our daily life, and the stress about these variables. Because this is a case study article, the sampling method used in this paper is voluntary sample method of non-probability sampling. 2 women about 15 years old chose to participate. One lived with her partner and 2 children, and the other lived alone with her dog. One had a high school education, and the other had a vocational training. One worked in manufacturing industry, and the other worked in social care, and both were permanent full-time employees. Just over a year before the study began, both women had been on full-time sick leave due to exhaustion disorder and had gradually increased the amount of time they worked until their health insurance ran out. Well, one of the women chose only 85% employment due to her stress-related health issues during the period of this study. The other woman engaged in tasks at work that differed from her usual responsibility due to her stress-related health issues. They both had attended cognitive behavioral therapy, while one of the women had participated in NBI programming on the same farm 1 year earlier. The other had no previous experience with NBI. Of course, this article does not count the qualitative part of the study, but also use some quantitative research to assist in obtaining the conclusions of this article. This article uses a number of tools, including data triangulation, semi-structured interviews. Individual interview guides were developed for each individual intervention session. Diary recording method, which contains 2 self-rating scales, one for stress and the other for health. Scales are the calming rating scale and the burnout scale. After obtaining the data, the following method are used in the analysis phase of the data. And we use triangulation. Data analysis were conducted separatively according to the timing of data collection. Interview tasks and diary notes prior to the NBI project. Exchange of ideas shortly after the NBI and diary notes after the NBI began. And the interview test for the long-term follow-up interviews. The data were first read as a whole to get a general sense of the content. The meaning units, for example, the parts of the text that answered the research questions were then extracted and condensed. The next step was to categorize and condense the meaning units and group them together based on similarities and differences in content, which was done in several steps. Finally, all three analyzed the categories were compared and interpreted in order to identify a topic that describes the potential meaning in the text. The data from the rating scales and questionnaires in the diary were analyzed and presented in a descriptive manner. Outcome rating scales. The scores of all 4 scales were summed to give a total score. The ORS has sufficient validity, solid reliability, and high feasibility. Sherram, Moran, and Burnout questionnaire results are calculated as the average of all items, with higher scores indicating poorer conditions. The final results of this paper are as follows. The theme of finding a source for recovery and well-being permeates all categories. The participants perceived the form and nature to be a calming refuge. They learned to be in the present and could manage the tasks. In togetherness with each other and the facilitator of the farm, they feel understood and confident, experienced joy, and found opportunities for change. They gained knowledge and positive memories and found new approaches in life. Self-assessment questionnaires indicated improvements of functioning in everyday life and reduced stress-related exhaustion at the end of the MBI programming. The problem in this paper and the suggestions for subsequent research are also integrated by the authors. First, the short duration of the MBA program may limit the results of the study. Second, repeated interviews and questionnaires can produce practice efforts and errors. Third, the hypothetical recruitment of 4 participants were not reached, and a single subject developed health problems during the course of the study that undoubtedly affected the results. But the sample size should never be too large. The last one, additional male subjects are needed to examine the impact of possible changes in experience on the study. If you are interested in more details of this article, you are welcome to search for the article to read. Thank you for watching the report of this group.